All right, what's up, everybody? So just came across this opening monologue. I haven't seen it yet. It's from Tucker Carlson. Say what you want about the guy. I probably agree with you, both positive and negative. But whatever you want to say, this guy is leading the cable rating news and has been for like 6 years. And if you aren't aware, Tucker Carlson pulls in numbers that like dwarf even other Fox News Channel programming. So yeah, Tucker Carlson not only beats out every other person on Fox, he beats out everyone from CNN, MSNBC, ABC, any news station doesn't pull in even like barely even a fraction of what Tucker Carlson does. So all that to say, Tucker Carlson gets very good writing teams, very good investigative teams. He gets a lot of resources put into his show because his show is the only one worth really watching on Fox News. It's the only one I watch. I watched Chris Hardball with Chris Matthews some, and I liked Special Report with Brett Baer. I like Brett Baer and Chris Matthews, or excuse me, sorry, Chris Wallace. I believe so. Yeah, he was who did the Sunday actual news, not the opinionated news. All that to say, Tucker Carlson. Let me adjust this a little bit. Hold on. So all that to say that Tucker Carlson gets some very good writing and stuff for his programming, but I just wanted to preface this by saying that, and I've done on my other channel some, and I'm gonna do it more on this channel just because I think that it's important for younger people to be involved in the political process, and people have always kind of told me like, hey man, you should do a YouTube channel and talk about politics, and eventually you can only tell people no so much, or you can only kind of be apathetic to something like that for so long. Shout out to my Friday the 13th, or excuse me, Friday the 13th camp, Crystal Lake right here, my hockey jersey. If you're wondering what those are, I like the colors on it. It was a Halloween costume, but I'm still wearing it throughout the year. So anyway, also, I don't know if you've seen the video yet. I gotten a new item from SpaceX. So this is the tag. Oh, if it will even focus. Man, what the heck? Booyah. There you go. All right, so let's get actually into it. Enough of that long opening monologue. Let's get into Tucker Carlson's opening monologue, shall we?
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, here's the latest summarized. Kevin McCarthy badly wants to be the next Speaker of the House, but as of tonight, he is not going to be. He doesn't have the votes. It's not a question of who's good or who's bad, who's well-intentioned, who's not. It's a question of simple electoral math, something that Kevin McCarthy is highly familiar with since he does this for a living. At this point, as of right now, facing that mathematical reality, Kevin McCarthy has two choices. He can either step aside and let somebody else do the job, acknowledging in the process that he is not the only person in Congress capable of being Speaker, or he can try and win over the people who oppose him, as you traditionally do in elections. Or you've got reservations about
Kevin McCarthy, say what you will about him, I personally think he's kind of a shill. That's just my personal views. I do live in Matt Gaetz' district, so I know. It's like I might as well be like, I live in Lauren Boebert's district, because people have very strong opinions about both of them. But yeah, Kevin McCarthy from California, I don't know why he would lead it's like the last Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is also a representative, a congresswoman from California. And now we're going to have a Republican California representative leading this Congress. It's like California is not at all what the rest of America is like. It's actually very far removed from what the rest of America is like, unfortunately, and fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But Kevin McCarthy, personally, I don't think he should be Speaker. That's neither here nor there.
McCarthy? You don't want to be ruled by a man who wears a Ukrainian flag lapel pin and lives with Frank Luntz? No problem. We get it. Let us tell you how he's better than you think he is. Let us try and change your mind. Let us try to convince you. In a normal race, that's what you would do. But that is not what Kevin McCarthy's team is doing. Instead, like the left they purport to oppose, they are using threats and fear to force people to support the candidate. Anyone who opposes Kevin McCarthy, one of his surrogates explained today, is, quote, an enemy, a, quote, terrorist.
Oh, geez, hold on.
That's their message. In a moment, we'll tell you how that message is working. But first tonight, in the summer of 2016, the government transparency organization WikiLeaks released thousands of emails from the servers of the
Julian
Democratic
Assange.
National Committee. Those documents showed conclusively that Hillary Clinton partisans had worked to rig the Democratic primary against her rival, Bernie Sanders.
Okay, this is actually I'm about to get upset. So, for those that might not know where I align politically, I'm more of like an anti-establishment candidate. I voted for Trump in 2016. I don't regret it. And I voted for him in 2020. I don't regret it. Neither of the Democrat candidates that came out at the time were very stellar. And yeah, I didn't like Hillary and I didn't like Joe Biden, and that's nothing against them personally. I don't know them personally. I just don't like them. I don't like their policies, their politics. I don't like what they view as politically correct for the nation, or like what is politically expedient for our nation. I don't jibe with it. On the other hand, Bernie Sanders, though, I jibed with a lot. Bernie Sanders is quite possibly one of the greatest politicians to have served in the United States, in modern history. There's that picture of him that circulated where he was sitting down with the civil rights protesters. It's like Joe Biden was arguing for desegregation, Joe Biden was arguing for segregation and was saying, hey, we need to keep schools separated because I don't want my kids to grow up in a racial jungle. You can Google it. He said it. He argued for that when he was literally freaking being paid by the U.S. government. So he was taking tax dollars, being paid, and then arguing for black people to not be integrated with white people. That was Joe Biden. And, he famously even said in 2020, I believe, yeah, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Or you ain't black if you don't vote for me. Huh. So you have that guy on one hand, or you have the guy who is photographed participating in the civil rights protest, sitting alongside a black woman who looked scared. In the picture I saw, it was like there was a black woman who looked scared, and he was sitting next to her, like holding her hand by like a police car. And you could tell it was clearly Bernie Sanders. And like there was no arguing. He looked basically like Bernie's, like just like he does now, except with brown hair because it hadn't gone white yet. And, a little less wrinkles. But it looked like a, 80-year-old, 40-year-old in that sense, I guess. It was a spitting image of him. And, yeah, for the way the Democrats did Hillary Clinton, or for the way they did, the way they helped Hillary Clinton and the way they hurt Bernie Sanders, in my mind, was unforgivable. And to me, I'm like, dude, I don't care if Trump said grab her by the even though it's like, probably shouldn't be talking like that. But at the same time, like, that pales in comparison to the guy who's arguing for desegregation. And I know the first thing you'll say is, well, that was 40 years ago. He was a grown man when he said that. He was a grown man. Like, huh? The guy was grown. How could you possibly offend that? He was a U.S. either he was a state senator or a U.S. representative arguing against desegregation. Or arguing, against it. And to me, I'm like, that is just unbelievable. And so, yeah, I don't know where Tucker's about to go with this, but I can already tell you it's going to be good.
Is, quote, an enemy. Let us try to convince you. In a normal race, that's what you would do. But that is not what Kevin McCarthy's team is doing. Instead, like the left they purport to oppose, they are using threats and fear to force people to support the candidate. Anyone who opposes Kevin McCarthy, one of his surrogates explained today, is, quote, an enemy, a, quote, terrorist. That's their message. In a moment, we'll tell you how that message is working. But first tonight, in the summer of 2016, the government transparency organization WikiLeaks released thousands of emails from the servers of the Democratic National Committee. Those documents showed conclusively that Hillary Clinton partisans had worked to rig the Democratic primary against her rival, Bernie Sanders. It was obvious from the start that that email dump had come from an internal source, probably from a DNC staffer who was offended by the corruption of the Clinton team. But of course, the Democratic Party couldn't admit that, too embarrassing, too revealing. So instead, in order to cover this wrongdoing, the Clinton campaign claimed that Russia did it. The Russians hacked the servers, remember that? Now, you may have believed it or not, but intel agencies in this country must have known at the time that it was not true. They would know, but they said nothing. And they said nothing because blaming Russia turned out to be a very useful political tool. In fact, before long, it became the default response to every perceived disaster in Washington. Hillary lost. Why Russia? Donald Trump can't be president. Why Russia? Hunter Biden's laptop is here. Russian. Audit aid to Ukraine? Can't. Russia. And so on and so on. So over time.
And that's another thing, too. If you've been paying attention, or even if you haven't been paying attention, the amount of Russian disinformation that's going on is incredible. And it's like, I don't mean Russian disinformation like the Hunter Biden laptop that's real. And I have to be careful with what I'm saying here. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a lot of stuff I can't really go into here. I can go into it on Twitter and into it on various other platforms, but YouTube's very strict with what I can and can't say. So I'm walking on eggshells here, but this whole thing about Russia, it was used as a scapegoat in so many different ways and for so many different things. And the fact that Russia now is like, okay, now we're in a war with you. We're in a war with Russia by proxy through Ukraine. And it's like people don't realize that like we overthrew the Ukrainian president back in 2014 who had been elected, and we installed Zelensky. So we put Zelensky in power, Obama and Victoria Nuland, the undersecretary of state at the time. And basically it was a regime change that we, the United States, made happen. And the reason being is because it was viewed as the right thing to do for democracy, just like in Iraq and just like in Afghanistan and just like all these other places where we've gone in and toppled governments because, yeah, sure, maybe they've been terrorist regimes operating as governments, and we need to not necessarily let that happen. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well then just track the spending at least. There's hundreds of millions of dollars every fiscal year that the United States government just loses. And I say that with like a little bit of hesitancy because I would need to fact check it, but I know, one thing I know for certain was September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, September 10th, General Rumsfeld, who was part of I think he might have been the Secretary of Defense, but he was either maybe the Joint Chiefs of Staff for the military. Regardless, Rumsfeld, Rumsfled, this gentleman, this officer of our military, was explaining to us how we had $2.3 trillion missing, unaccounted for. $2.3 trillion, right? And this was in 2001, and it was the day before 9/11. And, of course, 9/11 happens. We had 2 Twin Towers get knocked down. We had a third tower that fell, World Trade Center 7. If you don't know anything about World Trade Center 7, you're not alone. I think it was like when they asked people in New York City, it's like 96% of people didn't know about World Trade Center 7. You look up World Trade Center 7 because everyone knows about World Trade Center's Towers 1 and 2. But there was a third building, Tower 7, that collapsed. It was like a 60-story skyscraper. I mean, it was about half the size of the main towers, and it was in the same plaza, but it suffered very little to no structural integrity damage during the terrorist attacks. And the issue with that is that this building housed a lot of financial records. Financial records that could track back where this $2.3 trillion in spending had gone, or where was it, what happened, who where'd it go. Rumsfeld, help us out, where'd it go? Check out World Trade Center 7. It's got a bunch of financial records. Oh yeah, that fell down in that attack, and also, you know, collapsed at free fall speed when it had no structural integrity damage other than a few office fires, which were very minor, considering you can see office fires today burning through 60, 70 stories of a building. Just in Shanghai recently, there was a building burning 60, 70 stories of building on fire. No collapsing. It burned like 20 something hours. And I don't want to get like conspiratorial. The reason I mention all this is, it's just like the Russian disinformation of Hunter Biden's laptop. That was conspiratorial. Now it's factual. And this whole thing with the 9/11 Commission, it will be revisited. So this is, right now, I'm just talking as if it is conspiratorial, even though it's kind of odd. Look at World Trade Center 7. That's all I'm saying. And then the last point I'll make about that is that the Pentagon, the one spot that got hit when the pilot, one of the Saudis, we were in Afghanistan, but yet 15 of the 19 people who were involved in that were Saudis, and they were not involved. Like, I don't think there's like no people from Afghanistan. It's weird how those their passports were recovered from the rebel. Everyone's passports were able to be found. Like, no sweat. That survived that, but those buildings that are like some of the best, well-constructed buildings in our entire world that had some of the greatest engineers building them, and those engineers have all come out and said something was very odd about this. And yeah, it's like Larry Silverstein, who was the owner of the buildings, or he was kind of like oversaw the buildings themselves. He had, I guess like a month before, there was like an emergency renovation that needed to be done using the elevator shafts, and the buildings had to be empty for those like 2 days or a day. And there's also like some diamond trading firm on the top floor of one of the World Trade Centers that all just happened to miss work that day. So both those things are very weird. Larry Silverstein's group coming in and doing construction projects like emergency renovations a month before is weird. Rumsfeld talking about how we've lost $2.3 trillion, and then both the World Trade Centers get hit, and the Pentagon, and a third building that no one really knows about, but it fell at free fall speed and housed a bunch of financial records. So not only did that part get hit, but then like the Saudi, what I was mentioning with this Pentagon thing, the Saudi, instead of just flying, like imagine right here, right? This is the Pentagon, just the top of this microphone, sorry. And imagine like if you're in a 747, you come along, you're like right here, you would think just go straight down, because these guys could barely fly a single engine Cessna. But, they're in one of the most complicated planes that we have in aviation, which was like the Boeing 747 or maybe the 737 at the time. But regardless, it's a very, very complicated plane to maneuver and fly in. And people who can barely fly single engine Cessnas, pilots will say, if this person can barely fly a single engine Cessna, a little prop plane with two little propellers on the side, then it's almost like, that's like, someone who can barely hit the ball off a tee-ball, off a tee in baseball. And you're like, take that guy, put him in the Yankees game. He's ready to play in the big leagues. It's like, no. That's like, there's so many steps in between. But okay, sure, fair enough. So instead of like just flying it down, which would have been the presumably easiest and most maneuverable option, he does a very complicated 270-degree turn, and so descending while he's at it, all while in Arlington, Virginia, where the Pentagon is, or maybe it's Alexandria. But yeah, he does this huge descending 270-degree turn, and then he hits the side of the Pentagon. The pilot hits the side of the Pentagon. At this point, this video might not even make it onto YouTube. Who knows? But he hits the side of the Pentagon and hits the one spot that housed the military's financial records. So, like a day before Rumsfeld announces that we've lost 2.3 trillion, World Trade Center 7 with the financial records gets hit. The Pentagon, and the one spot that could have been hit that housed financial records that was the most complicated for the plane to get to was also hit. We have 4 grainy freeze frame footage pictures of this plane collision. You know what's crazy is we don't have a single video to this day of this Pentagon crash. To this day, and they just came out saying this stuff about JFK the other day, with the CIA having involvement with JFK and with Oswald or whoever the assailant was. It's like, come on, guys. And the fact that there was no plane, like you could easily show that. You could easily, like, there's no reason you couldn't. It's like there are every square inch of the Pentagon has cameras, every square inch, and all the airspace around it. All, like, the Pentagon is one of the most secured buildings in the world, and there's cameras everywhere. It's just like on January 6th, J6, when there was a pipe thingy that was found, I guess, near the Capitol. Nothing ever came of that, of course. Seriously, how? Sorry. It's, when I go through some of this stuff, it just angers me. Not only how foolish or how silly or how close-minded or how willfully ignorant the population can be when it's so blaringly obvious to anyone who's like can think critically. And yeah, I know that, like, I get off in this tangent here, and I know that we're talking about the Russia, but it's all tied together. And the way it's tied together is just like this industrial war complex that America is constantly involved in. It's like, say what you will about Trump, but we were actually at peace when Trump was in office. I wonder why. Oh, because war is one of those things where so much money is siphoned out of the public hands. These companies like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, these defense contractors who rip us off left to right and center. And then you have, it's just so much money is being lost every which way. And yeah, it's like here we have this Russia thing where it's like, Russia has never been our enemy. Not in the sense that, like, not in my lifetime at least, like, Russia, they might have their own visions of how the world should work. And, you know, you could make the claim that Putin might be trying to recreate the Soviet Union over there. And so, yeah, geopolitically speaking, it's complicated, but financially speaking, it's very straightforward. We are losing money, hemorrhaging money left and right over there, and we don't keep track of our weapon systems when they go over there. We're now sending over these Patriot weapon systems that have to have U.S. soldiers who are trained to be there to operate these systems. There's so many things that are just flying through that it's almost like it's a lot to keep track of. And, like, I personally, as someone who has a degree in political science and as someone who's been interested in politics since I was like 14 years old, now 30, it's like over half my life I've been following this, and especially in like the last 5 years I've been following it very, very, very closely, and more than I would like. But at the same time, it's like I'm trying to really understand all this, and that's why it's like partially why I'm here with you right now, is that I want people to kind of be able to maybe catch like a summary of what I've seen, and trust me, like I think I voted for Barack Obama in 2012, and I don't regret that either. So it's like Obama in 12, Trump in 16, Trump in 20. I worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign in 16. I worked on his campaign in 20. I like Bernie Sanders. I still like Bernie Sanders. I think he should have created his own party, or just like he shouldn't have taken what he took the way Hillary and them did that to him. So, But this whole Russia thing, it's so ridiculous. It's like, Zelensky's not that great of a dude. And you can say what you want. Zelensky's, people are like, oh, well, Zelensky's Jewish. We should be supporting Jewish people. I'm like, well, I'm Jewish too. And just like I said earlier, if you ain't black, you ain't black if you ain't vote for Joe Biden. You ain't Jewish if you don't vote for Zelensky or support Zelensky. It's like, no, dude. Get out of here with that. It's foolish. And it's wasting time, and it's distracting from the bigger issues, which is like, take away Zelensky's Judaism. It's like, he can be Jewish, and that's fine. And anyone can be anything they want. Just don't start a war, basically. And if someone like Russia is, I'm gonna have to stop right there. I have theories of why this war even started. I have some ideas about why that'd be the case, and I'll just leave it laboratories in eastern Ukraine. Dexter's laboratory in eastern Ukraine, along the Russian border, along like Ukraine and Russia's border. There were laboratories, Dexter's laboratories there, and they were similar to the ones in the other part of the world where accidents happen. Let's just say that, and we'll leave it at that. And so I think that's what really kicked off this whole thing. But the fact that we aren't allowed to see anything from Russia, there's not any Russian media or news allowed in America. It's like geopolitically or geolocation. It's like geo-locked, where it's like we can't see. You go try and find Putin stuff, or like go find stuff about Putin, and like in anywhere, you don't find it unless it's some clip, in which case it's usually edited, or like you're not going to just find some long form video of Russian relations or like what's going on in Russia. They don't want people in America seeing what Russia's saying. And that to me is concerning, because it's like, if we've learned anything from the Twitter files, it's that we should be able to hear and listen to people that whoever they might be, don't want us to hear. It's like with Elon and these Twitter files, like, it's bad, very bad. And that's a story for a whole nother time. That's a long story too. And we'll get into that when the Fauci files are released. You best believe, because I got a lot to say on that. And I'm not going to be saying that on YouTube, because YouTube has, on my other account, EFLYX, YouTube has given me 2 strikes. I think it's been a total of 3. Got 1 appealed. But they were just, it was from a movie trailer. A movie that's on IMDb. And it was related to Fauci. And that pisses me off, that it's like, I'm like, YouTube, how can you do this when you were literally in real time seeing how you're censoring stuff that should be allowed to be shared? Where it's like people were censored for the Hunter Biden laptop information. That was true. That was Russian disinformation. The only disinformation that's Russian is what our government is telling us about Russia. Because I really, 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 really have trouble believing just about anything that's being said by them. So let's just keep going. That was
probably inevitably, the inflated threat of Russia became a pretext for everything bad, including censorship in this country. It's Russian disinformation. Shut it down. Thanks to new reporting from Matt Taibbi, who has spent weeks sifting through previously secret Twitter files, we know the federal government's intelligence and law enforcement agencies enthusiastically joined the effort to censor the political speech of American citizens illegally. It was a sophisticated effort. At one point, for example, the State Department released a report falsely claiming that thousands of Twitter accounts were controlled by foreign governments. Russia! And then, unnamed sources in the intel world leaked scary headlines about Russian disinformation running rampant on Twitter. Twitter deleted data potentially crucial to the Russia probes, screamed Politico, ever obedient to the intel agencies. And then the Washington Post published a piece threatening to increase regulation of Twitter's advertising because, of course, Russia. So it was a manufactured panic about Russia. But on the basis of that manufactured panic, lawmakers in Washington demanded more censorship.
The issue is not that the companies before us today are taking too many posts down. The issue is that they're leaving too many dangerous posts up. In fact, they're amplifying harmful content so that it spreads like wildfire and torches our democracy.
Oh, too much speaking. Your opinions are a threat to our, quote, democracy. That would be sitting United States Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. But almost nobody said anything because Russia, and so it accelerated. Not long after that tape was shot, in November of 2020, Congressman Adam Schiff of California, who was then the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, demanded that Twitter censor any discussion about the House Intelligence Committee. Quote, suppress any and all search results about committee staff, a Schiff aide demanded of Twitter. Schiff was particularly furious that a journalist called Paul Sperry had reported on Schiff's connection to the CIA whistleblower behind Donald Trump's impeachment. So Schiff demanded that Twitter censor Sperry. Quote, suspend the many accounts, including Paul Sperry, commanded Schiff's office. This is illegal. It's openly unconstitutional. Government officials cannot suppress speech. That's the Bill of Rights. And even at Twitter, executives seem to understand that. No, this isn't feasible. We don't do this, replied one Twitter executive. But ultimately, however, they caved. In time, in fact, Paul Sperry was censored by Twitter, along with many thousands of others. Twitter had effectively become a government propaganda outlet. How that happened and the effect that it had on American electoral politics is one of the most important stories of our time. And as we said, we know about it because of Matt Taibbi, who has been at the center of it. Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the National Committee. Those documents showed conclusively that Hillary Clinton partisans had worked to rig the Democratic.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna wrap it up here. I try and keep my videos like 30 minutes or less. I know there's a lot on here. I think it's important that you see me giving my thoughts in full and not just little snippets. Like, I don't really like doing cut commentary as much because I think it's important for you to see my facial reactions as I watch something, my facial reactions as I'm thinking of stuff I'm saying or as I'm listening to stuff. I think that's important. I think that tells a lot about someone when you can like watch someone watch information. You know, that's why they have like one-way mirrors in interrogation rooms and stuff, because you want to see how someone acts under certain situations. So I hope you enjoyed it. I do appreciate you bearing with me. This is coming from someone who's studied political science and someone who's like participated in the political process, someone who's participated in elections, both like as a volunteer, as a campaign staffer, as a just regular voter, someone who's gone to, you know, a university in America, all these things. I don't have a problem with you if you're a Democrat. I don't have a problem with you if you're a Libertarian. I don't have a problem with you at all. Anyone. I have no problems with anyone. The only time I would have a problem, though, is if you are unwilling or unable to listen to something that might challenge your own views. And so, if you made it this long in the video, then clearly you're not in that group. And if you are, it's okay too. It happens. You know? But I'll let that be it for now. I appreciate you all being here, and we will be back again tomorrow with another video. Till then, take care, stay safe, and be happy. Much love. Peace out.